What up, good people? It's the SMT. Thanks for tuning into this video, and today we're going to be talking about QCIs, and specifically this is edition number 3 of my QCI series. I already covered T-Mobile and AT&T QCI. Today in this video we cover Verizon QCI. If you want to see any of those videos at the end of this one, I'm going to go ahead and put both video cards at the very end, so if you decide that you want to watch those, you haven't seen them yet, you can do that at that time. So in order to do this video properly, had to do a little bit of homework, had to do some digging around, had to ask some questions, and kind of look into the specifics of QCI operations on the Verizon Wireless Network. So it took me a little bit of time, but I think I got everything for you here. I'll also throw in that I had to do some testing just to verify that these things were happening as it is written out and spelled out in their networking plan. But it seems to hold up pretty well, and I think I feel pretty confident in the way that these orders of operations are going. Let's start first with what a QCI is. A QCI is a quality of service indicator. It's essentially how carriers utilize an architecture to make sure that you get a certain quality experience based on what you're paying for, your plan, and certain tasks on the network. It's a really important tool in my estimation for people to get what they're paying for. For example, somebody who's paying for a really cheap prepaid or MVNO plan should not have the same QCI as say someone who is paying, a premium price for a premium plan and should have priority access on the network. And that's the type of thing that the QCI is for. So this is probably the closest thing to a guarantee of a high quality experience on a network that you can get when it comes to 4G LTE standards. How things play out with 5G is going to be totally different. We'll probably see network slicing coming into play, and that is going to be a totally different set of operations, and it'll probably be better, but this is what we have currently with non-standalone cores and 4G LTE network operations. This is what we got. Think of QCIs as network traffic lanes. What you're doing on the network, what type of plan you have, those types of processes, each have their place in a specific type of lane, and that traffic moves at different guaranteed rates. So as I stated before, the premium plans have a higher data QCI than say something like Visible Wireless. I'll talk more about that later in the video. Let's start first with the basics. Okay, QCI 1. QCI 1 is really the only GBR rated QCI class. GBR stands for Guaranteed Bit Rate. The other QCIs that I'll discuss are non-GBRs or non-guaranteed bit rates. So QCI 1 is Conversational Fixed Bitrate Video. QCI 1 is GBR Conversational Fixed Bitrate Audio. This is essentially conversational voice. This would be your calling, regardless of whether it's on 1X or it's on 2G, 3G CDMA, 4G LTE, makes no difference. It's always going to be on that QCI. One step further, it doesn't even matter what plan you're on. So if you're on some prepaid MVNO option, or if you're actually on some first responder type of plan, makes no difference. That is how QCI 1 works. This would include Verizon Voice over IP. It also includes non-Verizon Voice over IP. It is essentially the audio component of telephony. I'll also throw in that there is absolutely no packet loss involved in this type of data transmission. It has absolutely full immunity to that type of situation. Next, we have QCI 5. QCI 5 is IMS signaling and application signaling. This is where you get into non-GBR or non-guaranteed bitrate. These are low data rate applications, and they do have high priority data transfer. Do keep in mind, between GBR and non-GBR, you are not guaranteed to have any type of packet loss. That can happen with QCI 5 and pretty much any type of non-GBR data. So during times of congestion, this is where you start to see, if you ever run like an ookla speed test or you run in a speed test app, you see packet loss there, you'll see some kind of a percentage. That's estimating that type of a metric. So this is where you kind of come into the fold, and you might see this if you're testing the network or experiencing slowing down and congestion on a network when there's a lot of users on a single sector or a tower site. Probably want to know what IMS is. IMS is essentially just packets of data that are going to and from, the phone and the network and that exchange. It's essentially like the opening of a data session between the device and the network. I would say probably the best comparison is think of it like routing. Now we can actually get to the data transfer part, which you guys are going to be more familiar with some of these processes. So let's move to QCI 6. Now if you're unsure as to what's going on right now, how I'm going from 1 up to now 6, is the lower the QCI number, the higher the priority of the QCI. So it kind of may seem like it doesn't make sense, but it actually does. The close to the number is to 1, the higher the priority on the data network. This is non-GBR, so it's non-guaranteed bitrate. It's variable bitrate video, the video part of telephony. This would include Verizon video telephony, non-Verizon video telephony, TCP-based tasks, emails, chats. Maybe you got some file sharing that you're doing peer-to-peer or to some kind of an application. So that's where you kind of start to see some of the basic use cases of most smartphones and that type of data usage that you actually are sending large packets of data. Moving along. Next is QCI 7. QCI 7, also non-GBR. This is the highest data priority traffic. So when you think about traditional LTE-based data traffic, this is where it falls into place for the highest priority. This would include the first responders. This would include public safety individuals or devices. This would be public safety data applications. Enterprise users are also put into this lane, this QCI 7. And again, in order to qualify for this type of plan to be on this QCI, you've got to meet certain requirements. So being a first responder or being in a, some type of like a public safety use case. And enterprise, you have to verify those things when you sign up for these types of plans. That's going to be your highest priority traditional data users. The next is going to be QCI 8. This would be your standard entry-level QCI. Also non-GBR, this is your best effort internet traffic users. A really large portion of Verizon's data traffic is going through this QCI. Most plans fit into this QCI, therefore most users are on here. In fact, it's probably a very overwhelming amount of data traffic that's in this QCI. I would estimate that probably at least 90% or more of the data traffic is on this portion or this QCI. So what's in QCI 8? You got your video streaming, QCI 8. You have your standard video operations. Pretty much anything that is going into these next following plans that is basic data usage. Some of these plans include legacy unlimited plans, be the 2005 plan. This would be the 2017 new Verizon unlimited plans. All the current plans are also going to fit in here with the exception of the starter unlimited. That's the only postpaid unlimited plan that's not in QCI 8. Also the older legacy tiered bucket plans of like 25 gigs shared amongst the users on the account, that sort of thing. Or if you're on an MVNO and you have a tiered plan or a bucket plan, it may also be placed in here. Also, certain tablets on certain plans can be placed into QCI 8. Some of them are actually placed into QCI 9. Tethering and hotspot plans, like dedicated hotspots. Those are going to be QCI 8 as well. The hotspots that are prepaid are a little bit different. QCI 9. Okay, so this is going to be like your true deprioritized version of the Verizon data network. QCI 9, also non-GBR. It is the lowest priority on the Verizon network, just below the QCI 8 priority. This threshold is kind of a differentiator between traditional Verizon usage and then the deprioritized version of the network. This is where your low priority mobile-to-mobile device transfer data goes. And also, if you have some type of like a soft cap data deprioritized threshold, after you go over that type of allotment, say for example, you have a plan where it's 22 gigs of high-speed data priority data. After that 22 gigs, for the remainder of the billing cycle, your data traffic may spend a lot of time in QCI 9. Some of the other plans, you might have like 50 gigs of usage and then it'll be deprioritized at that time. In my estimation, I will tell you guys that Verizon does a pretty, well, good and bad. Good for their data network management, but bad for you as the user, as they aggressively do manage data traffic between QCI 8 and 9. If you do go over that threshold, you're probably going to be stuck in and around that QCI 9 level for the duration of the billing cycle. Once you passed it, it'll restore back at the time of when your billing cycle kind of like restarts. MVNO and prepaid, if you have unlimited data plans, and sometimes they don't even have to be unlimited. Prepaid and MVNO typically goes in QCI 9. It is heavily deprioritized, it is heavily network managed. You'll have all types of video caps, 480p playback, a lot of those types of restrictions because you're not paying for the full premium pricing to be on QCI 8. That's why you're placed into QCI 9. Visible Wireless is in QCI 9. Verizon Prepaid and the Starter Unlimited on postpaid, they're in QCI 9. Most MVNOs put Verizon's access into QCI 9, with the exception of some plans which may have tiered or data allotments. They may put you into QCI 8. So like I think about some of the MVNOs like Charter and Spectrum, Xfinity Mobile and Spectrum Mobile. Those companies actually offer a by the gig usage. They're actually in QCI 8, but they're unlimited versions of those plans. They're in QCI 9. Mobile hotspot and tethering, those are always going to be in QCI 9 regardless of how much you've used. They can also be throttled down after certain amounts of usage down to 3G speeds, which at that point, it doesn't even matter what QCI it is anyway. There's also some other stuff about the Verizon network you should know. When you connect to the 5G ultra-wideband, whether it's N77 C-band or it's the mmWave access, none of those actually abide by these rules. These QCI rules don't apply to the 5G NR. It does apply to the 5G DSS, the nationwide 5G, but thankfully for us, the 5G ultra-wideband, the mid-band, the C-band, the N77, the N260 mmWave stuff, all that not subjected to these same rules. If you're connected to that, there is no QCI designation. I do believe in the video from Carlos S. Tech, he was able to identify a difference between the 5G home for Verizon versus the 5G business. He was able to identify business level priority with dedicated speeds, testing those two different internet connections. So that's something important to note too. But that, again, not related to this particular QCI. You're probably also wondering, what's the difference between each QCI? What am I guaranteed to get, and how much of a difference does the QCI level make? To give you guys perspective, QCI 9 in a congested version of the wireless network for Verizon, when you're congested, meaning on a congested tower or there's a lot of users there, it is almost unusable. Being on QCI 8 is really important currently for the Verizon network when you're not connected to ultra-wideband. Being on QCI 7 is the best case scenario, but unfortunately you'd have to be a first responder, a public safety employee of some sort like an agency, or an enterprise customer, which you may not qualify for. So QCI 8 is going to be your best option. The difference between QCI 9 and QCI 8 appears to be a difference of about 1.5x. So that would mean if there is X amount of capacity or throughput on a sector or a tower site, you're going to have that much more capacity by being on a slightly better QCI. So you could see how it would be a much better option, right? If you can be on a QCI 8, your throughput, your capacity, your experience is going to be much better. To take it one step further, the QCI 7, 1.5 times better in terms of the capacity availability to you. So as a tower gets congested, the first individuals that are getting deprioritized and slowed are going to be QCI 9. Then you're going to be slowed if you're on QCI 8, and then the least slowed down network access is going to be QCI 7. That 1.5x multiplier is going to be important in very high leverage situations, which is why the first responder QCI 7 is so important. The best thing coming up in the future on these 5G network cores is going to be network slicing. A lot of this QCI stuff, this QoS quality of service stuff, is going to actually have some true fundamental architecture that is actually going to probably make it for a best user experience with IoT devices and low bandwidth devices, kind of getting their lanes, getting their boxes, and then having all these individualized network components to properly manage a network intelligently. That's what we're looking for with 5G standalone cores. If you are wondering about the other QCIs, for the most part, it's just going to be, you're calling for QCI 1, the audio portion of what you're doing with your smartphone, and then pretty much everything else is going to be based on the data usage within your designated plan QCI. And whether or not you go over your priority data usage, and then if you enter a higher QCI, those types of things can happen. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. Maybe you have been, trying to figure out what this Verizon QCI is like and what are some examples of plans and where they fall into place and what type of companies have access to Verizon's network, where do they fall in QCIs. And if you have any questions, you can leave them down in the comment section and ask. And there are some community members that'll probably help answering these questions. And of course, I can do my best to answer them as well. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, you can return the favor to me by liking this video, sharing it to your friends and family and other people on your social media platforms. That helps out. That's great of you. So thank you in advance for doing that. Turn on the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. And do check out some of the stuff we got going on with the community. There's links in the description for my Twitter, my email, and also my Patreon community, who actually helped encourage me to make this video. Thanks for watching. Thank you for being here to tune in. Appreciate you all. Have a great rest of the day. We out this piece. Peace.